Hello, my name is David Lee. I'm an educator and a learning designer. In this video, I'd like to share what I've learned in my journey in equipping my students with creative problem-solving skills, as well as how I design learning experiences that provide relevant and authentic opportunities for creative problem-solving. Let's get into it. When you take a look at your school's website, what do you see? Take a look at other schools' websites and check out their about pages. What common language do you see? Buried behind information about the school calendar, registration, and transportation, you will probably find descriptions, a list of goals, or a mission statement that says something about nurturing young people to be creative and collaborative, or become active problem solvers, and includes something about being a positive contributor to the world for a better future. You will probably find adjectives like imaginative, innovative, inspiring. These are the same words that you will find on posters, on the walls at school and classrooms. At the end of the day, it is clear that we as educators and schools are trying to develop our students into creative, collaborative problem solvers. It's important that we're all equipped with a creative problem-solving toolkit because we don't want to just accept the consequences of the problems and challenges that we face, but have the ability to take action and bring positive change through innovative responses and solutions. Sidney Parnes, who famously co-developed the creative problem-solving process, or CPS, stated, "We can all create a desired future instead of merely accepting what life offers." Creative problem solving can empower us to try and design our future the way we want it to be, making everyone a designer. This is especially important in our current state of the world, a VUCA world, an acronym that describes the volatility, uncertainty, complexity, and ambiguity of the types of challenges that we face today and in the future. This importance is evident in the recent Future of Jobs report, where of the top 10 skills that are rising in prominence in professional spaces, 5 of these skills fall in the innovation and creativity and problem-solving clusters. And 2 of the top 10 skills fell into the interpersonal cluster, both incredibly important for creative problem-solving. This also matches the beliefs of educators. According to a global survey, 97% of educators find creative problem-solving as important for students to learn in school. However, in the same survey, it showed that creative problem-solving skills are currently playing a minimal role in today's curriculum. For example, innovative thinking is emphasized in only 12% of the curriculum. So within education, we use these trendy buzzwords like creativity, problem-solving, and growth mindset. But are we as educators and schools really equipped to provide our students with authentic opportunities to learn these skills? I have to admit, when I entered the teaching profession, I was pretty ill-equipped in helping students develop their creative problem-solving skills, or even design learning experiences that allowed them to use the process in authentic ways. My education and training to become an educator did not include how to teach these skills, what that would look like, or what that would entail. And I think this is probably a similar situation for most educators as well. I think this led to some schools not effectively teaching these skills or just totally lacking these type of experiences. And who can blame them when there is a lack of training and professional development for teaching creative problem solving? This leads to frustration from all parties involved. If you search for this term on the internet, you will find over 300 million search results. A lot of the information you will find in the top search results can be traced back to the work done by Alex Osborne in the 1940s, an American creativity theorist who coined the term brainstorming. In the 1950s, Osborne and Sidney J. Parnes developed the creative problem-solving process, or CPS, a methodology for approaching a problem or a challenge in an imaginative and innovative way. It's an approach that helps us to redefine the problems and opportunities you face, come up with new innovative responses and solutions, and then take action. Now, some people see creativity itself as something that is related only to the arts, or even something that is not productive or worthwhile. Some see it as even magical or whimsical, something that comes from an external source over which the individual has no control. Some also think it's something that you have or you don't have. However, this is not the case. Creativity can lead to worthwhile things, especially with innovative solutions that bring positive change. It is something that everyone already has, can work on, practice, nurture, and improve. In addition, another myth seems to be that creativity is not strongly correlated to content knowledge. However, this is also not the case. According to Dr. Ruth B. Noller, a leader in creative studies, the construction of knowledge through experiences is essential to creative thinking. With her background as a mathematician, she developed the creativity formula, where creativity is represented by C, and is a function of knowledge represented by K, imagination represented by I, and evaluation represented by E. This formula shows how creativity is a result of not only a person's imagination, but also their deep knowledge. Albert Einstein also saw the relationship between knowledge and imagination for creative thinking. In an interview with the Saturday Evening Post in 1929, Albert Einstein stated, "For while knowledge defines all we currently know and understand, imagination points to all we might yet discover and create." So in other words, creativity not only requires us to gain the knowledge needed to bring change, but a deeper conceptual understanding of the knowledge is needed, so that we can use imagination to generate innovative ideas and solutions. Creative problem solving involves the highest level of cognitive learning within the revised Bloom's taxonomy, the CREATE level. As you can see in the pyramid graphic from Vanderbilt University, the framework starts at the bottom with the basic level of cognitive learning, remember, and goes all the way up to the CREATE level. The CREATE level involves putting elements together to form a coherent or functional whole. It is the highest level in the framework because it requires all levels of thinking, where students draw upon the information they learned, applied, analyzed, and evaluated to then put them together into a novel structure or pattern, creating some type of new tangible or conceptual work. The creative problem-solving process involves the three cognitive processes of the CREATE level: generating, planning, and constructing. Generating is the process of representing the problem and arriving at alternatives or hypotheses that meet certain criteria. Planning is the process of devising a procedure for accomplishing some task, like planning out a research paper on a particular topic. And finally, constructing is the process of inventing a product, like constructing a solution to a problem. As you can see, these advanced cognitive processes of the highest level of the revised Bloom's taxonomy are embedded within any type of problem-solving process. Targeting higher order cognitive skills within learning can promote student engagement as well. The learning involved in creative problem solving is active, self-directed, experiential, and essential for lifelong learning. Since the start of my teaching journey, I've tried to find a creative problem solving toolkit that I could equip my students with. But something that was not only scaffolded, but wasn't superficial or shallow. Something more expansive and holistic, focused on not only the steps of the creative problem-solving process, but the practices and mindsets that build a creative problem-solving culture. Luckily, I went to a small education conference in 2014 and was introduced to the design thinking methodology. Design thinking is an empathetic, creative problem-solving toolkit of mindsets and practices that cultivates an innovation-friendly, human-centered culture. To me, design thinking is the ultimate creative problem-solving toolkit because it takes Osborne's process of approaching a problem or a challenge in an imaginative and innovative way, but in addition, it heavily focuses on empathy and human-centered practices, where decisions are made, ideas are generated based on the needs and desires of the people who are facing the problem or challenge. So empathy being the foundation of the whole process. At its core, design thinking has 5 practices: empathize, define, ideate, prototype, and test. Let's take a look at an example unit I've done in the past to learn about these practices. In this unit, students were focusing on the following driving question: how might we improve our local community? For the social studies unit, students learned how communities were designed to meet the needs of its members by providing them with spaces to live, work, play, and solve problems. Empathize is the practice or the act of gaining a deep understanding of the context, the problem, and the stakeholders involved. But most importantly, the people who are directly affected by the problem and who will ultimately use the innovative solution, the end users. The goal is to gain insights that can lead to opportunities for innovation. Students walk through the community to make observations of the residential and business areas, the people living and working in the community, and the available transportation systems. They also interviewed the local community members, business owners, and residents to learn about their needs and wants. Check out the description to access a free poster you can download that showcases the key principles for students to use to administer effective interviews. The define practice is the act of synthesizing the information that was gained through empathy work, developing a problem statement, or improving an existing one. Through empathy work, students gained insights about the following members of the local community. Residents need a way to access a greater variety of restaurants and entertainment that does not require them to drive to other locations. Business people and students need a way to rest and relax because surprisingly they work or study for 8 to 9 hours each day. Older community members need a way to exercise because they are conscious of their health. These problem statements are valuable because they place the needs, wants, and desires of the end user at the forefront and guides the whole creative problem-solving process. Ideate involves the brainstorming process where stakeholders are encouraged to think up large quantities of wild creative ideas, where they defer judgment, and where people build upon the ideas of others to increase the creative momentum. With these insights in mind, students brainstormed different ways to meet the needs of their community members, and through convergent thinking, designed a city plan using the most optimal, viable ideas they could come up with. Check the description to access a free poster you can download that showcases the key principles for effective ideation. Prototype is the act of creating something tangible, an experimental model that can communicate an idea that could possibly solve the problem statement, that could be tested and elicits feedback from the end users. It is a way to get ideas out of our minds and in the hands of end users. It also provides opportunities for learning, problem solving, and thinking through ideas that may arise through the act of creation. With the community members' needs, wants, and desires in mind, students designed city plans that included a variety of options for food and entertainment, places for exercise like golf driving ranges and hiking trails, and places for relaxation like spas, parks, and gardens. They also included different ways to make the community more accessible to potential customers for businesses. Test is the act of sharing prototypes with end users and having them use and experience the prototypes, learning what parts worked well and what parts didn't. It is an opportunity to find failure points that can be improved, and again, an opportunity to empathize and learn more about the community members. After getting feedback from peers and improving ideas, students presented their city plan at the City Plan Expo, where community members, parents, students, teachers, and the local urban planner got to see what the students came up with. Students used the practice of storytelling to illustrate how their city plan met the needs, wants, and desires of community members. In addition, design thinking is not only a process with embedded practices, but also involves a set of creative problem-solving mindsets. These are enduring characteristics and thinking that lead to patterns of innovation-friendly behaviors when faced with challenges, dispositions, and behaviors that define who we are as creative problem solvers. These mindsets actually help design thinkers effectively execute the practices we discussed. Without these mindsets, practitioners are merely doing these actions. Instead, with mindsets, you are carrying out these practices with intention, purpose, and guided by appropriate beliefs and attitudes. The mindsets help manifest the practices of design thinking. Let's take a look at a few of these mindsets. The mindsets that make up this collection are from IDEO, Stanford University's D-School, and the book Design Thinking, New Product Development Essentials from the PDMA. First mindset is empathy, or human-centeredness. Students had to think about the perspective of community members to gain a deep understanding and the complexity of the context as well as the end user's needs, wants, and desires. Second is beginner's mindset. Students get to think and see things from a novice point of view and places themselves as the learner at all times, listening, questioning, learning, and setting aside biases and assumptions. Third is embrace ambiguity, where students understand that it is okay to be confused or uncomfortable due to the lack of clarity on how to create the city plan, but understanding that by collecting information, exploring possibilities, and making connections, there might be a solution to what was thought to be an ambiguous situation. Within this ambiguous situation, it is important for students to have a holistic and integrative mindset to see how the concepts of the community, needs and wants, security, and belonging are part of a holistic system. Having understanding of the relationships and interactions that these concepts and ideas have with one another. Next is optimism. Students had to believe that their work could possibly bring positive change or impact to the community, no matter how small or big the impact or change is, through perseverance, learning, and work. Students also were developing their creative confidence, the belief that everyone is a creative problem solver and that they can generate creative ideas and have the ability to make them into a reality, which leads to the mindset of bias towards action, an action-oriented mentality that takes ideas and actually makes them happen, understanding that things move forward by the act of doing. The make it mindset focuses on being experimental. Students had to understand that it is important to first quickly create simple, imperfect prototypes to learn by doing or building, and have an iterative mindset where they seek to always improve and refine multiple iterations of their ideas and prototypes to produce better or more innovative solutions in shorter periods of time. With the learn from failure mindset, students had to embrace experimentation, trying out different ideas, and making mistakes to uncover new questions, ideas, and learnings that ultimately can lead to improvements and innovations to their city plans. Here are some other units where students got to utilize design thinking to empathize with their end users and develop innovative solutions that meet their needs. Students using design thinking and nature-inspired design to develop solutions to human problems. Students create services and products for a marketplace event that meets the needs of their peers. Students empathize with museum goers and learn from museum curators and exhibit designers to develop clear, interactive, and immersive ways of communicating information. Students empathize with festival goers and experts to design whimsical festival floats that evoke positive, sentimental emotions. Before we continue, I would love to touch upon a couple of things I've learned in my journey that hopefully will help you model and teach design thinking to your students more effectively. First is that design thinking is only as effective and helpful, or even ineffective and harmful, as the person or group of people using it. As the designer Jennifer Daniel pointed out in her speech, design is not good unto itself. Design is in fact neutral. The results of using design thinking depends on how we use it. Second is that as design thinkers, we have biases that we are not always aware of. Since biases are based on assumptions and stereotyping, and not on rational, systematic thinking, implicit biases affect our ability to make more intelligent decisions and ideas. Another crucial aspect we need to examine when practicing design thinking are inequalities and oppressiveness that stems from privilege and power. As a design thinker, you enter the context or space of the end user with privilege and with a position of power because of the fact that you are tasked to solve the end user's problems. Design thinkers are sometimes placed onto a pedestal, which could ultimately create a savior complex that could possibly, if not careful, inflate their sense of importance. This relationship might lead to behaviors, decision-making, and structures that perpetuate power, privilege, and oppression. There are three things that you can do to combat the negative consequences of our biases, privilege, and power. The first two is to continuously practice self-awareness and self-reflection throughout the process so that you're more aware of the power dynamics and privilege that exist within the relationship of the design thinker and end user, as well as the biases we have and the assumptions that we make that can be counterproductive to the quest that we have to bring positive change. The third is to make the relationship between you and the people with the problem or challenge more of a partnership, so that the solutions are a result of true collaboration, co-creation, and where designers are decentering themselves. So the end users are seen as assets to the process, seeing their skills, background, and experiences as crucial factors. Now, how do we design these types of learning experiences that focus on real-world contexts and end users, and provide students with the opportunity to develop into empathetic, creative problem solvers? The following is the process I use to develop this real-world context. If you would like to download the graphic organizer I use to design real-world contexts, check the description. First, you need to start with the standards. You will need to examine and study your standards to gain a deep understanding of what students will be able to know and do. There is a specific mindset that is needed for this whole process. The edupermaculture mindset is a set of beliefs that allows us to simulate experiences or directly utilize behaviors, strategies, practices, and systems found in successful real-world learning environments and integrate them into school learning experiences and ecosystems. This mindset helps us to constantly look at what is going on outside our education bubble and connect ourselves with the challenges that exist in the real world and what successful learning looks like in those contexts. We then move to step number 2, taking a look at the standards and trying to find what real-world context, one outside of the education setting, would require a professional to use these set of knowledge and skills. The real-world context would require a holistic understanding, a systems perspective to see the interconnectedness and relationship between the key academic concepts that make up the context. The context would involve a challenge or a project that doesn't have one right answer. It's open-ended enough that students would come up with different answers to the problem and create different products. It's a challenge or a project that would require prototyping and experimenting in a situation that might be ambiguous for students at first. And of course involves the participation of end users who students would be empathizing with. So for our unit example, the real-world context was that students took on the role of urban planners and designed a city plan to improve the living and working experience of its residents and businesses. Once a real-world context and a challenge or a project has been developed that would require students to be able to perform the standards, it is time to create an overview of what the unit would look like through a learning narrative. A learning narrative is any visual representation of what your students will experience within a unit or a project. In this respect, the students who undergo this experience are the heroes of this learning narrative, and we, the educators, are the mentors who guide them through their learning journey. This makes the unit more meaningful and relevant because as the protagonists, they are the ones who are making key decisions that have consequences, whether good or bad, overcome obstacles, and get to resolve the problem of the learning narrative. Learning narratives are beneficial because they help educators see the relationships between the learning events within a project or a unit. It provides a holistic view of how each learning event is essential to the overall narrative, but also how the concepts or the standards of the unit or project are connected to one another, bringing the project down to its essence. This requires an edupermaculture mindset because we are trying to replicate the best we can what the professionals in the field would experience for our students. So for the city plan unit, I tried to best replicate the process of what an actual urban planner would go through. Next, I take the professional process of completing the project within the real-world context and then convert it into a learning plan that is appropriate for my students. I am trying to make it as authentic as possible, not only replicating the process, but also directly utilizing their effective learning strategies, behaviors, and methods. It is important to note that the project is not done in a section of the unit, but it is actually the unit. So students will be learning within the real-world context throughout the unit, taking on the role of a professional and applying the knowledge and skills within an authentic project the whole time. Creating a real-world context based on the standards helps students to naturally ask the overarching question of the unit, as well as questions that lead to investigations and reflections of the content and skills in the unit's standards. So for our example, students naturally ask questions based on the context, like what is a community, what is its purpose, how do communities meet the needs of their members, and what are the needs of the community members. For assessments, we take a look at the learning plan and locate natural points where students can be assessed. Since every aspect of the learning plan is part of the process of completing the project, we can actually choose places within this process that could be used to assess students' understanding and ability, both formatives and summative. That is logical within the real-world context. For example, we can use student reflection from the interviews of the community members to see if students understand that community members have needs and wants. We can also use their draft city plans to see if they understand that the community's goal is to meet the needs of its members, and how the community can bring security and a feeling of belonging. This makes the assessments more of a performance assessment compared to traditional ones, where they involve the demonstration and application of knowledge. Instead of do you know it, it is more about how well can you use what you know. Therefore, the formative and summative assessments are more authentic checkpoints of understanding, instead of random activities that don't connect with the real-world context. Again, this requires an edu-permaculture mindset because we are identifying parts of the process that would actually be assessed within the real-world context. We have to ask ourselves, how would a professional be assessed in this situation? To recap, we learned about the importance of equipping students with creative problem solving, and how design thinking, in my opinion, is the ultimate creative problem solving toolkit. We also took a look at the practices and mindsets of design thinking through an example unit of study. And finally, we also examined how to design learning experiences like the city plan unit that are optimal for design thinking integration. Thank you so much for checking out this video. If you are interested in learning more, please check the links below to receive free resources that can help you start on your journey of equipping your students with design thinking. Until next time, stay perpetually in beta, and I'll see you on the next one. Peace.